Mike Evans injured on Monday Night Football. We talked about it a little bit on the recap show. It looked like did he officially get concussed on that play too?
I'm pretty sure.
He went down, hit his head, but also broke his collarbone.
Yeah.
And so that's a 6 to 8 week injury. That's going to be most of the season. He still could come back. But a huge blow for Evans, who was already coming off of missing a couple games with a hamstring injury. Of course, he's got that record for 1,000-yard seasons as a receiver. Your thoughts on the Mike Evans injury and what it means for the Bucs, but also Mike Evans, the legacy, the person, the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks for everybody involved that, Mike Evans is down for the majority, if not the rest of the season. And given his age, 32 now, I think, that could be the end of his career. Who knows? Maybe it's not. Maybe he'll come back and he'll play another few years. But, it could be it for Mike Evans. So obviously people turn at this point to, well, what does his career look like if this is it? If this is the end, what is his legacy? How does it get wrapped up? Where does he stack? Where does he rank in the pantheon of receivers, of Buccaneers greats, et cetera, et cetera? And that's where I think you get a fairly broad range of opinions on Mike Evans.
Did you see Kyle Brandt's take?
Well, Kyle Brandt had a take a year ago where his spicy take in 2024 was that Mike Evans was the greatest ever Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He said he was a first ballot Hall of Famer and had been for a while, and that he's the greatest ever Buccaneer. He then resurfaced that take, obviously, after the Mike Evans injury. Yeah. And I disagree with both elements of that. I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer for multiple reasons. Number one, I don't think he's good enough to have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Number two, almost nobody now is a first ballot Hall of Famer at the wide receiver position.
True.
There have been 3 first ballot Hall of Fame wide receivers this century. They are Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, and Megatron, right? 3 of the best 5 receivers to have ever played the game, you would say. So, everyone has to wait. Chris Carter had to wait. Marvin Harrison had to wait. There are receivers that are still waiting that I think have a better resume for their career than Mike Evans. So I think the idea that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer is actually insane. Whether or not he's the greatest ever Buck, his case rested a lot on, some postseason success, all that kind of thing. So it gets fuzzier than just saying, was he a better player than X, Y, or Z? I think he's clearly not the best ever player to play for the Buccaneers.
That's not what he's saying. Tom Brady had a 3-year stretch with the Bucs.
The best ever player, including longevity.
Right. So you have Derek Brooks.
He's clearly not the best player that Tampa Bay owns.
Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, Rondé Barber from that Super Bowl team.
Levante David is a better player than Mike Evans for their careers.
Wow.
And
Levante David is the best Buck of all time, maybe.
I'm not saying he's the best Buck of all time, but I'm saying even if you want to restrict it, because he mentioned the great, the Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Warren Sapp thing, and his argument was, well, those 3 all played together, therefore they enhanced each other, therefore Mike Evans is better. If you want to stick to that argument, I would argue that Levante David, just as a contemporary, has been a better player and had a better peak and has had the same kind of I've been doing it by myself type of deal relative to Mike Evans. I would say David is a better argument.
I'm curious what other people think here, because you mentioned this way earlier on the show. You're not trying to tear down the person and everything.
Mike Evans,
the Bucs.
Who is it? Neil Payne for 538 or whatever used to have this. The Hall of Pretty Good? The Hall of the Hall of Very Good type of thing, right?
Yeah.
You're a very, very good player. You should be in the Bucs Ring of Honor. You're one of the best Bucs to have suited up for the team. All those things. In my opinion, there's a big gap between those guys and are you a Hall of Famer? Certainly. First ballot, maybe an irrelevant, pointless distinction anyway, but. To me, Mike Evans has been a great NFL player. He absolutely is one of the best Bucs to have played in history. He should be in the team's Ring of Honor. I don't believe that he's either the greatest Tampa Bay Buccaneer of all time, or necessarily that he's a Hall of Famer at all. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video.
Check the Mic is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
And the all-knowing algorithm is convinced you'll also like these videos. And who are we to argue?
Yeah, Mike Evans, awesome player. They re-signed him a couple years ago, despite him getting into his 30s, being more injury-prone, and all the different things, the risk that you incur when you do that, because he's been a model citizen, quintessential Buck, went through the bad years up to the Super Bowl year, and now in these good years that the Bucs had. I mean, they wanted him around, and he's awesome. He's got over 100 touchdowns in his career, which used to be a big thing. Like Steve Largent had 100 for a while.
It still is a huge thing,
right?
Like
And it's the longevity's been impressive, and the consistency with Evans. I think in stretches, you watch him play, whether Brady was throwing him the ball or Jameis or Baker, and you're like, man, this dude can take over games. This guy's unstoppable at times. But it wasn't always there, And how many years was he really a top 5 to 8 receiver around the NFL? Like if you were polling in each of those individual seasons, would you rank Mike Evans in the top 5 to 8? And that's always one of my criteria for the Hall of Fame is within this era, were you absolutely one of the best and unquestioned at that time.
And 5 to 8's not even a particularly narrow band in that,
Yeah.
like I would be more stricter than that. I was like, can you make an argument that at any point you were like a top 3 wide receiver? And I don't think you can make that case for Mike Evans. Really.
I mean, I'm saying top 5. Well, could you do 5 to 8 at any given point? Maybe. He's probably in there in certain seasons or whatever.
But that's what I'm saying. Like that's a pretty wide net to be cast.
I'm being kind here. I'm being kind.
Yeah.
Because there's Jimmy Smith was a top 2 receiver.
For a decade.
Right, for a while of his career. Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce were in the top 3 to 5 receivers.
I mean, Torrey Holt had
for
one
a
of
while.
the greatest, 5-6 season stretches to open a career of anybody ever.
And then you have this 1,000-yard. And so my take on this whole thing is I said this a couple weeks ago on Twitter that you responded to. There are enough stats out there now and ways to filter stats that you can tell any story that you want. So if you want to tell the story, how many total seasons is it? 11 for Mike Evans? 11 straight seasons with over 1,000 yards. And again, there's some detractors for Evans. They're like, well, one season was 1,006, 1,035, 1,004 because we made this arbitrary cutoff. But because you say 11 straight seasons over 1,000, who else has done that? Well, Jerry Rice. Well, Jerry Rice is the clear GOAT at everything. Longevity, peak, multiple quarterbacks, Super Bowls. Jerry Rice has done it all. He's the GOAT. And Mike Evans is the only other person who's done this one thing that only Jerry Rice has done. Therefore, let's equate those things.
It's just such a,
So you could tell any story that you want. I could also tell the story that Mike Evans, where did he rank in just receiving yards? It was the same metric, right? He was 10th or 12th or 15th in these various seasons. And you could tell that same story on the other side and say he's barely a top 10 wide receiver. You could tell either side of the story if you want to.
I have a hard time with stats like this, where it's like a guy has done a fairly not impressive thing 11 straight times, and that makes it impressive, right?
Yeah.
Now, look, that's a longevity thing. There's the fact that Mike Evans has been able to only miss 3 games maximum in that 11-season span is pretty nuts. Most receivers get hurt. Most receivers miss time. There is absolutely something to be said and something laudable about a guy that just does not miss time to the point where they've been able to stack up 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons, right? But 24 different receivers had an 1,000-yard season last year. So it's not a particularly high bar. It's not a huge achievement. Guys like Calvin Ridley, Jacoby Myers, these are guys that had 1,000-yard seasons last year. It's not a tremendously high bar. So how many of them do you need to stack up before the not very high bar becomes a very high bar just because you put 11 of them back to back? In my opinion, that's just not a particularly good way of measuring greatness, if you like, right? So I don't have if that's the thing, and it will be, that'll be a big part of Mike Evans' case when people start making it for Hall of Fame.
It's only him and Jerry Rice. Right. How could you argue with that?
Only those two guys have put 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons. I mean, in my opinion, 4 1,700-yard seasons is dramatically more impressive than 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
I
right?
agree.
So,
and then that's like the Kurt Warner. Like Kurt Warner's got a 4 or 5 game or season stretch that's among the best in history.
If that's true, right? If you are also of the opinion that 4 of those seasons is worth more than 11 of the other seasons, well, then what's the point here? Then the 11 thing is irrelevant because we don't care. It's more important how good you were, not how long you were pretty good for.
Yeah, I mean, and the Kurt Warner example I use is he probably had 4 or 5 seasons, not necessarily in a row, but if you take his 99, 2000, his 08, 07. Like if you take his 4 best seasons, it's like you're putting that up there against the peaks of other great quarterbacks. But Warner didn't have the longevity. He had this staggered career where he was good early and then good late, and 3 Super Bowl appearances and the whole thing. And that's a certain type of Hall of Fame case. Evans is going to have more of a Frank Gore type of Hall of Fame case.
Yes.
I think Evans was better than Gore. Would you put him over Gore?
Yeah.
I'm having a tough time remembering Frank Gore at his peak.
So he's on, I think his case is absolutely similar to Frank Gore's, and Curtis Martin is the other player who I think he's somewhere between those two on the spectrum. I don't think he's as good as Curtis Martin was, and I think he's better than Frank Gore was.
I'm not remembering Curtis Martin being that great.
That's the type of player he was, in my opinion. Incredibly durable, very good, but never one of the true best for any period of time.
All right.
And I look, and again, I always feel bad about these conversations because it sounds negative relative to everybody else. Like Kyle Brandt out here saying he's a first ballot Hall of Famer and the greatest Buck of all time. I just think that's incorrect. And I don't think you do him any favors by patronizing him effectively and saying that. I think that's clearly untrue.
I'll be honest. There's sometimes I wish I wasn't as analytical as I was and I could just flow with the emotions and say, like, I get Kyle's stance on it. Like you watched him across the bad times, up to the good times. There's a certain level of consistency. Like Mike Evans has been unbelievably consistent, not just statistically, but in how he's played, how well he's played, and the reliability of him for over a decade. That's really impressive. So sometimes I wish, and I think he's a very good, like it's not a knock to say he's a very good player.
This is the thing. I think we undermine like how good it is to just have a really, really good NFL career and be, team Ring of Honor worthy by trying to like layer hyperbole onto everything. And like every player that retires is the greatest ever at whatever he's done. It's like, okay, number one, he isn't. And number two, why do we need to go there? Like it's already good enough to say Mike Evans has been a fantastic NFL wide receiver for over a decade and is one of the best Bucks to play, deserves to be in the team's Ring of Honor and be, acknowledged as one of the best Tampa Bay Buccaneers of all time. I think it does him and everybody else a disservice to try and make the case that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer and the greatest Buck to play of all time. Because I think it's fairly convincingly not the case. And I just think it's patronizing. Like we don't need to do that for him to acknowledge that he's great.
And maybe we're part of the problem because we jumped right into the Hall of Fame question instead of saying this does affect the Bucs this year because Mike Evans can still play, by the way. I do hope he comes back to play. I don't really care about the 1,000-yard streak. I mean, it's unfortunate that it's ending. I don't care through the sense of, like, I don't think it's the thing that tells you how good Mike Evans is necessarily. I think it's the way he plays, and he's still out there like a capable deep threat, can catch the ball off his frame, add a ton to the offense, and it's going to be a big loss for the Bucs.
One last thing, by the way. If you are of the opinion that Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer, the number of wide receivers that you need to clear in the backlog for the Hall of Fame to get him in is pretty crazy.
It's just another issue, and I'm actually more of the mind I'd rather get a bunch more of them in than leave them out. Even though passing has taken off, I think the receiving talent has also taken off in the last 2 decades, and a lot of them deserve to be in.
But like a guy, I mean, you mentioned him earlier, a guy like Jimmy Smith has no chance of making the Hall of Fame.
People have no clue how good Jimmy Smith is, and it's very sad. I'm not just as a 90s Jags homer. Like, that dude was unbelievable as a 3-level threat, but especially down the field.
But he's got no chance anymore of making the Hall of Fame, like zero. And yet those are guys that are waiting, right? Like Sterling Sharp only just made the Hall of Fame after arguably being
he was clearly
there.
One of the best.
He was like his career was shortened by injury, so it's more complicated. But like he was up there with the Jerry Rices of the world as like this guy might be the best wide receiver in football for a significant period of time. And he had to wait this long. Reggie Wayne's not in the Hall of Fame. Like Torrey Holt, you mentioned before, Hines Ward, Jimmy Smith, Chad Johnson. There's so many wide receivers you need to get in. I would argue all of those guys are better than Mike Evans was.
Just for perspective.
And Larry Fitzgerald's going to come up next year.
Jimmy Smith had over 1,000 yards in 9 out of his 10 final seasons. It's actually very Mike Evans-y type of career, except one year he only had 805 because he got hurt and missed a few games in 2003. So he only had 805 one year.
But he also got you look at some of his
Does that because he was 200 below this random threshold?
But you also stack up some of his like accumulation, compiling stats, and they don't look that amazing because the start of his career took a while to get going because he like broke a leg and
crazy stuff.
He had a series of weird things pop up at the start of his career. It took him a while to get cooking, but then once he did, there's literally a decade stretch where he was the second most dominant receiver in basically every category to Marvin Harrison, I think.
Jimmy Smith did not start really until he was 27.
Correct.
27 through 36.
And now we're saying like once you hit 30, game over, right? Like,
oh yeah, he was still, and he did it with the great Mark Brunell, but he even did it with Byron Leftwich too.
Right. So I'm just saying, if you want to put Mike Evans in the Hall of Fame, that's fine, but look at the number of wide receivers you need to get clear before that happens.
That's what it all comes down to. You want to put a receiver in the Hall of Fame? Fine. Just put Jimmy Smith in first. And
we'll put 25 more guys in the Hall of Fame if you want to get that deep into the bench. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video.
Check the Mic is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
And the all-knowing algorithm is convinced you'll also like these videos, and who are we to argue?